The headlights cut through Oregon rain at 2 a.m., and the child standing at the gate didn't flinch, just held up a crumpled photograph like it was a ticket she'd been saving her whole life. Well, before we start this story, tell us where in the world you are watching from. And if you believe kindness should never die, please subscribe and help us keep stories like this alive. The headlights cut through Oregon rain at 2 a.m., and the child standing at the gate didn't flinch, just held up a crumpled photograph like it was a ticket she'd been saving her whole life. The rain hammered the tin roof of the Hells Angels clubhouse outside Bend, Oregon, drowning out the low hum of conversation inside. Garrett Flint Harlow sat alone at the bar, nursing his third whiskey of the night. His knuckles were scarred from decades of poor decisions and worse company. The clubhouse was quiet for a Friday. Most of the brothers had ridden out earlier for a run down to Crater Lake. Flint had stayed behind, claiming he needed to work on his bike. Truth was, he just wanted the silence. At 52, silence was the only thing that didn't ask questions. The door rattled, once, twice. He ignored it. Wind, probably. Then came the knock, soft, hesitant, not the heavy fist of a brother or the impatient rap of someone looking for trouble. Flint set down his glass and walked to the door, instinct making him glance at the shotgun mounted behind the bar. He opened it, rain poured sideways in sheets. At first he saw nothing. Then he looked down. A girl, maybe 7, maybe 8, stood shivering in a soaked yellow raincoat. Her dark hair clung to her face in wet ribbons. In one hand she clutched a small backpack. In the other a photograph protected inside a plastic sandwich bag. Her lips were blue. Flint's throat tightened. He scanned the driveway behind her. No car, no adult, just darkness and rain. "Jesus, kid," he muttered, stepping aside. "Get in here." She didn't move. Her eyes, wide, dark, unblinking, studied him like she was confirming something. Then she held up the photograph. Even in the dim porch light, Flint recognized it. A younger version of himself, leaner, less gray, standing beside a woman with long auburn hair and a smile that used to make him believe in second chances. His hand found the doorframe for balance. "Where'd you get that?" His voice came out rougher than he intended. The girl's lips trembled. "Mommy gave it to me. She said if anything happened, I should find you." She paused, water dripping from her coat onto the concrete. "Are you Garrett Harlow?" He nodded slowly, unable to form words. "I'm Piper." Her voice cracked. "Mommy's name was Vanessa. She died 3 days ago." The world tilted. Flint gripped the door harder, his breath catching like he'd been punched. Vanessa. He hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in 8 years. Hadn't let himself think it in 6. The girl, Piper, swayed slightly, exhaustion pulling at her small frame. Flint's instincts kicked in. He stepped forward, scooped her up without asking, and carried her inside. She didn't resist. Just let her head rest against his shoulder, her body limp with relief or surrender. He couldn't tell which. Inside, the warmth hit them both. Flint set Piper down on the worn leather couch near the fireplace and grabbed a blanket from the back room. It smelled like motor oil and cigarettes, but it was dry. He wrapped it around her shoulders, his hands shaking slightly. "When's the last time you ate?" She looked at the floor. "Yesterday morning, at the hospital." Flint moved to the small kitchen in the back, rummaging through cabinets. He found crackers, peanut butter, and a box of juice someone had left behind. Not much, but it would do. He brought it over and set it on the coffee table. Piper ate slowly, methodically, like someone who'd learned not to waste food. Flint sat across from her in the armchair, watching. She looked nothing like him. Everything like Vanessa, same sharp cheekbones, same quiet intensity. But there was something in the way she held her shoulders tense, guarded, that felt familiar. "How'd you find this place?" he asked quietly. Piper pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. The edges were soft from handling. "Mommy wrote it down. She said you'd be here." Flint took the paper, Vanessa's handwriting neat, deliberate, the clubhouse address, his name, and at the bottom. "He'll take care of you, I promise." His vision blurred. He folded the paper carefully and handed it back. "Your mom, what happened?" Piper's face crumpled, but she didn't cry, just pulled the blanket tighter. "Cancer." She fought really hard. But it came back. Flint's jaw clenched. He stood abruptly, turned toward the window so she wouldn't see his face. Outside, the rain continued its relentless assault. Vanessa was gone, and she'd sent their daughter to him. A man she'd walked away from because she knew what he was, what he'd always be. Flint turned back to Piper, forcing his voice steady. "You got any other family, grandparents, aunts?" She shook her head. "Grandma died when I was 4. Grandpa before I was born. Mommy said it was just us." "Just us, and now just her." Flint ran a hand over his face, feeling the weight of every bad choice he'd ever made pressing down on his shoulders. He wasn't father material. Never had been. Vanessa knew that when she left, pregnant though he hadn't known it then. She'd made the right call. "Listen, kid, Piper," she interrupted softly. "My name's Piper. Piper." He said it carefully, like testing the weight of something fragile. I don't know how to do this. You need someone who knows what they're doing." Her eyes met his, direct, unflinching. "Mommy said you were the bravest person she ever knew. She said you'd be scared, but you'd figure it out." The words hit like a fist. Flint sank back into the chair, suddenly exhausted. Vanessa had always seen through him. Seen past the leather and the reputation to whatever broken thing lived underneath. And somehow, impossibly, she'd trusted him with this. With her. "All right," he said quietly. "You can stay tonight. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." Piper nodded, her eyelids already drooping. Within minutes, she was asleep on the couch, still wrapped in the blanket. Flint watched her chest rise and fall, steady and trusting. He pulled out his phone and stared at it for a long time before dialing. "Flint." The voice on the other end was sharp, alert despite the hour. "What's wrong?" "Reggie," Flint said. "I need you to come back, now." Reggie Books Castellano was the club's treasurer and the closest thing Flint had to a voice of reason. 20 minutes later, his headlights swept across the driveway. Reggie stepped inside, shaking rain from his jacket. He was shorter than Flint, wiry, with reading glasses perpetually perched on his head. His eyes went immediately to the sleeping child on the couch. "What the hell?" he whispered. Flint gestured toward the kitchen. They spoke in low voices, Flint explaining everything, the knock, the photograph, Vanessa. Reggie listened without interrupting, his expression shifting from confusion to something harder to read. "You sure she's yours?" Reggie asked finally. Flint pulled the photograph from his pocket and handed it over. Reggie studied it, then looked back at Piper. "She doesn't look like you. She looks like her mother." "That's not what I meant." Reggie handed the photo back. "But if Vanessa sent her here, there's a reason. She wouldn't have done that lightly." Flint nodded. "I need to figure out what happens next. Can't just keep her here." "Why not?" Flint stared at him. "You serious?" Reggie leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Look, I get it. This place isn't exactly Norman Rockwell, but that kid walked through a storm to find you. She didn't go to cops or social services. She came here. Because Vanessa told her to?" "Exactly." Reggie's voice was firm. "Vanessa knew what she was doing. She knew who you were, what this life is, and she still chose you." The words settled between them, heavy with implication. Flint looked back toward the couch where Piper slept peacefully despite everything. "I don't know the first thing about kids. Neither did I before my nephew moved in," Reggie said. "You figure it out, one day at a time." Flint was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What about the state, child services?" "We'll handle it, get a lawyer, file for guardianship, but first," Reggie nodded toward Piper. "First, you let her wake up knowing she's safe." Morning came gray and quiet. Flint had moved to the armchair sometime around 4, unable to sleep but unwilling to leave Piper alone. She stirred as pale light filtered through the windows, blinking slowly as she oriented herself. Her eyes found Flint immediately. "You're still here," she said softly. "Yeah." He cleared his throat. "You hungry?" She nodded. He made scrambled eggs and toast, moving carefully in the small kitchen like he was defusing a bomb. Piper sat at the table, legs swinging beneath the chair. She ate slowly, watching him. "Mommy used to make eggs like this," she said, "with butter." Flint's hand paused on the spatula. "Yeah, she taught me." It was a lie, but a kind one. Truth was, Vanessa had tried to teach him to cook once. He'd burned everything. But sitting here now, watching Piper eat, he wished he'd paid better attention. "What happens now?" she asked. Flint set down his coffee mug, the ceramic scraping against the worn table. "Now we make sure you're taken care of, legal stuff, paperwork." Piper's face tightened. "Are you sending me away?" "No." The word came out harder than he intended. He softened his voice. "No, but there are rules, people who need to know you're safe, that you're with someone who can look after you proper." She studied him with those dark, evaluating eyes. "Mommy said the world has lots of rules, but the important thing is doing what's right, not just what's easy." Vanessa's words in a child's voice. Flint felt something crack in his chest. "Your mommy was smart." She was the smartest. Piper's chin lifted slightly. She was a nurse. She helped people even when she was sick. The pride in her voice was unmistakable. Flint remembered Vanessa in Scrubs. They drove into Bend in Flint's pickup. He wasn't about to put Piper on the back of his bike, not yet. The town was waking up, coffee shops opening, early morning joggers on the Riverside Trail. Everything normal. everything surreal. At Target, Flint felt completely out of his element. He pushed a cart while Piper walked beside him, her hand occasionally touching the metal side like she needed the anchor. "Pick out what you need," he said gruffly. She selected carefully, 2 pairs of jeans, 3 shirts, a package of socks, underwear. She held up a purple jacket with butterflies on it, then put it back. "That one's nice," Flint said. "It's expensive." Her voice was small. "Kid, don't worry about that." He grabbed the jacket and dropped it in the cart. "What else?" By the time they finished, the cart held clothes, toiletries, a pillow, and, at Flint's insistence, a stuffed animal. Piper had chosen a small wolf with gray fur. At the register, the cashier smiled at them. "Shopping for your granddaughter?" "My daughter," Flint corrected quietly. Back at the clubhouse, Flint cleared out the small room behind the office. It had been storage for years, boxes of old records, spare parts, forgotten memorabilia. He worked methodically, creating space. Reggie showed up with his truck and a folding bed from his garage. "Had this since my nephew stayed over," he explained. "It's clean, barely used." Together they set it up, added the pillow and a blanket Flint found in his own closet. Piper hung her new clothes in the narrow closet, arranging them with careful precision. She placed the wolf on the pillow. "What's his name?" Flint asked from the doorway. She thought for a moment. "Ryder." Despite everything, Flint almost smiled. "Good name." That night, after Piper was asleep, 3 more brothers rolled in from their run. Dutch, the club president, walked straight to Flint. He was 60, weathered, with eyes that had seen too much. "Reggie called me. Said you got a situation." Flint led him outside where they could talk without waking Piper. Dutch lit a cigarette, the ember glowing in the darkness. "This the truth? Vanessa's kid?" "Yeah, and you're keeping her." "That's the plan." Dutch was quiet for a long moment, smoke curling into the night air. "This place isn't exactly child-friendly, brother." "I know that." Flint's jaw tightened. "But she's got nowhere else, and Vanessa sent her to me for a reason." "Vanessa left you because of this life," Dutch said carefully. "You remember that? She couldn't handle what we do, what we are." "I remember." The words were bitter. "But she still trusted me with Piper when it mattered." Dutch studied him, reading something in Flint's face. Finally, he nodded. "All right, we'll make it work, but changes need to happen. No club business here while she's around. No parties, no." "I know." "Good." Dutch dropped his cigarette and ground it out with his boot. "And Flint, don't screw this up. That kid's been through enough." Monday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine. Flint helped Piper into her new purple jacket, his large hands fumbling with the zipper. She stood patiently, letting him figure it out. Patricia Vance's office was downtown, above a bookstore. The walls were lined with legal volumes and framed degrees. She was in her 50s, gray hair cut sharp, eyes that missed nothing. She shook Piper's hand first. "I'm Patricia. I help people with complicated situations." "Is my situation complicated?" Piper asked. "A little bit, but that's okay. We're good at complicated." Patricia gestured to chairs. She asked Piper gentle questions about her mother, about school, about what she wanted. Piper answered honestly, her voice steady. "I want to stay with Garrett. He's my dad." Patricia made notes, her expression neutral. When Piper went to look at the fish tank in the corner, Patricia turned to Flint. "The state's going to investigate. Home visit, background check, interviews. Your record will be scrutinized." "What are my chances?" "Honestly, without a DNA test proving paternity, slim." Flint felt the floor shift beneath him. "How do we get one?" "I can arrange it, this week if you're willing." She paused. "But Flint, you need to understand, even with proof, there are complications. Your affiliation with the club, your past arrests, the environment." "I'm clean now, 15 years." "I know, but perception matters." Patricia's voice wasn't unkind. "The question the court will ask is whether a child is better off in foster care or with a biological father who has your history." Flint looked at Piper, who was tapping the glass gently, watching the fish glide past. "She walked through a storm to find me. That's got to count for something." "It does, to me. We'll make sure it counts to the judge, too." The DNA test was scheduled for Wednesday. 2 days that felt like 2 years. Flint found himself watching Piper constantly, memorizing details, the way she hummed when she drew, how she organized her crayons by color, her habit of checking to make sure he was nearby. Wednesday afternoon, they drove to the clinic. The technician was kind, explaining each step to Piper like it was an adventure. 2 swabs, quick and painless. "Results in 5 to 7 days," she said. "We'll call as soon as they're in." On the drive back, Piper was unusually quiet. Flint glanced over. "You okay? What if it says you're not my dad?" Her voice was barely audible over the engine. Flint pulled the truck over onto the shoulder, putting it in park. He turned to face her fully. Listen to me, that test is just paper, just science. It doesn't change anything about what matters. But what if? No what ifs. His voice was firm but gentle. Your mom sent you to me. That makes you mine no matter what some lab says. You understand? Tears welled in her eyes. She nodded, then unbuckled and climbed across the seat into his arms. Flint held her, this small person who'd turned his entire world sideways and felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Purpose, that evening, Dutch called a meeting. The brothers gathered, 6 of them, the core who'd been around for years. Flint brought Piper, figuring it was better she understood the family she was joining. She sat beside him at the long table, Ryder the wolf clutched in her lap. Dutch stood at the head. Most of you know the situation by now. Flint's got a daughter, she's staying. That means changes. He looked around the room. No more parties here, club business happens elsewhere. This place becomes clean, family-friendly. Anyone got a problem with that? Silence. Then Tiny, the club's enforcer, 6'5" and 300 pounds of muscle, spoke up. What about runs, events? We adapt, Dutch said simply. We've got the warehouse on Route 20, we use that. Another brother Crow leaned back in his chair. We've had families before, remember when Axel's sister stayed with her kids? This is different, Dutch said. This is permanent, Flint's applying for legal guardianship. All eyes turned to Flint. He met each gaze steadily. Piper's small voice cut through the tension. I don't want to cause trouble. Tiny's rough face softened immediately. Kid, you're not trouble, you're family now, that's different. One by one, the brothers nodded agreement. Crow pulled out a bandana, surprisingly colorful, and handed it across the table to Piper. Welcome to the family, little sister. Piper took it carefully, running her fingers over the fabric. She looked up at Flint, uncertainty and hope mixed in her expression. He squeezed her shoulder gently. That night after everyone left, Flint tucked Piper into bed. She was wearing new pajamas with stars on them, Ryder positioned carefully beside her pillow. Garrett, she said as he turned to leave. Yeah, can I call you Dad instead? He froze in the doorway, his back to her so she wouldn't see his face working. When he trusted his voice, he turned back. Yeah, kid,